I hope so. I didn't take them out. Thanks.
Because it was easier to just pull up my internet printer was down. Okay, so this is a recap or a summary of. So if you have never and are interested in reading it, okay, Liam, would you pass these out to everyone who wants one? Introduction to the network, as much as it is describing the heart behind the network, RBNet is. It is a network of like-minded churches with three purposes. And so the explicit statement, I think it might be in there, in fulfilling the Great Commission to the ends of the earth. So missions being the goal. And then that core document you have, live that out among our sister churches. And each year the Reformed Pastors Conference, it's not even like a local thing in Clark, because Jonah wasn't around yet, for the General Assembly, office-bearing person from the church. So any man from the church, 5 officers, and I can't go, I don't know, sick, represent us for us. I try to attend every year, and I've attended 2018. We had too much. Where did all this come from? Where did the Reformed Baptist Network come from? How did it get started? Well, it started in 2015. How can we do this? How can we find a way to support missions among what things look like without such a network? In Ivory Coast, was sent out by his church in Fayetteville, Georgia, this new missionary and his wife to Ivory Coast, and then eventually France. It's not like fundamentalism and some other groups where they have to like cold call. It's not like the SBC where you have to apply this huge organization where the sending church contacts others and says, will you support this mission? A person is sent out from a church, let's take this church in Georgia, assembly, and say, here's David and Nikki Vaughn. They are prospective missionaries to France. Where we came from, here's where we're going, here's what we desire to do. And then, through the network to some degree, but then, of course, after its founding, the network, the group, which was then this like formal network together. And this comes from our confession of faith, which says God, insofar as they enjoy opportunity and favorable growth in love and mutual edification. And that's mutual edification. So that was 2015. The first General Assembly was in 2016. Levels of involvement. You can be a full member church. You can be an associate. I joined as an associate individual member, meaning that I connected with this group. And then in 2019, when the church was finally, I went to the GA, and Alex and Allie were there as well, and joined their membership. I currently serve on the planning committee, and we talk about what the upcoming event should look like. And most of this year's GA can be found on the worth watching or listening to. The theme is church planting. Some of whom you might know, Baruch Maoz, perhaps. He's now retired. He's doing a really wonderful Reformed perspective. So he's working hard at doing the writing ministry of the Lord still. The church's need to confront the world's mentality around convicting session. And then the second speaker was Conrad, and he addressed why churches should church plant. He then encouraged us. The church has planted so many over the years. So I was really helped by these. There are morning devotionals each morning. Last weekend was the first devotional, and he gave a short message for an 8:30 in the morning sermon, kind of to wake up a little bit. Owensboro, Kentucky, the other church across town in Owensboro from our same pastor's message. We heard missionary updates for ladies who attend. So this, like I said, this is not just pastors. So there's a ladies' tea. And then there was a session on challenges, a Q&A on church planting. And I thought this was fascinating as I was moderating it. There was a missionary to Portugal. So no Americans on this church panel. And God has been planting churches, business and bylaws and procedures and things like that. For instance, it revealed to us that if a church wanted to join, let's try to tweak the membership process so they can join and not have to wait 2 years. The priest focused on promoting our, but not necessarily our kind of reform, but we just want to say, here's who we are. If you would like to read it, a clarifying statement on the Sabbath, bring it to people, and it kind of made people go, what does that mean? So there's a clarifying statement if you'd like to read it. And Hope Reformed Baptist Church in Port Lavaca, Texas. Right? 3 new individuals, and some of them were like me, 3 new missionaries, an associate missionary to Cambodia, mentioned, an endorsed missionary to Portugal, and he was actually sent out. His name was Tiago. I've been in this church for 10 years, and I want to go back to Portugal. I know his name, but I can't say it out loud because of security purposes. We added new members. Churches all over the world. We had a couple brothers come from the continent of South America. I think we might have had somebody from Europe as well. And one of my personal favorites of this thing is kind of like last weekend with the GA here, when I just had at the GA where we had, in this case, it varies depending on the church, serious. They let him out of the nursing home just to come lead the singing at this. All right, so a couple updates from missionaries that we support or have a friendship with. It's a longer page, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. But he introduced Lorelei and Maeve. Maeve was, they've been over there almost 7 years. Oh, there it is. It says it right there. We've been Lough, L-O-U-G-H. Into lockdown in March of 2020, and only businesses deemed essential, but churches were deemed unessential. And they've been open ever since. They've had a number of interference, but the government's constant talk with people. We continue to have one of the strictest lockdowns and things. At one point, we Skyped with them like a year ago. It was crazy. There's really intense restrictions over there. We tried to help and provide for church members in need. I continue to preach class, and Ashley does a Bible study with a 16-year-old girl during the older, well, they're too old for the kids' class, but not quite ready for the adult class. We were very thankful that we got to put on another event called Grace Marriage. We bought enough books for 15 couples, and they had enough for everyone. Thank you for your prayers and support for all you've done. From the Selfs in Atlanta. So a brief, kind of, Peter, 20 years probably, maybe more? So the Selfs went to West Atlanta to yourself as a retired person. You're 65 or so in your life. Would it be to, one of the things that you rent, you pay? Time shots going off every day. Okay, picture that in your mind. That's what the Selfs did. They were like 6, giving us a great family, good health, let's go make use of this. 6 years, and we constantly marvel and thank the Lord for the house that we bought 6 years ago, shelter, and then their local church as well. That they had to transition from one church to another because their church says making white people attend to mandatory meetings. Elder, it was not pretty. So you'd like to take people from our church to hear the word, help raise funds for, which is really cool. And then they take their own car, so about 20, while also doing their evangelism that they do in these very clubs because of COVID, but they also have started, they just had a family move near them to move here to escape the violence of Chicago, this particular family, as they have 8 children. It turned out to be just plain old fun, he says. With a bag of snacks and tracts, they are genuinely great. Recently, a couple showed us the 2-page, these pinned it on the wall by their bed so that they could read it every day. And gospel leaflets, and we hand out about 100 of these every week, which I think is like Horatius Bonar called "How Shall I Go to God?" And he reformats and puts it in this little pamphlet, and he has to modernize the language and things like that. But he said it's already attending, including a neighbor who's owner of a strip club, so you can imagine. We help in this, it's called City of Refuge, which is a lady. I usually don't have to prepare too much for this one because they know so need to minister without having to do a lot of prep in advance. They've done premarital counseling for several young families. And we sow many gospel seeds around town during the week, and these couples are virtual sponges. What might become with the people who are struggling. So we've lived here long enough now that we have some sad memories of people who we soil from 4 or thereabouts. So the places we go, we see people we know and have shared the gospel with, and this is very satisfying. Strength, our hope, and our delight in this work to which He has called us. Okay, now as for the current status of the network, we have Reformed Baptist churches, 1689 churches. We also have an associate subscribe to that's basically an abstract of principles, individual members, so which one I used to be. We have 20, that was surprising to me. We don't have anybody currently who doesn't have 100 three categories, and I'm not totally clear on all of these, and that's like what Bob and Kathy Self are. And they have been sent out by one check in the mail, and they open it and they put it in their bank account, give the salary to the selves. So that's service. Then there's associate and endorsed, meaning I have support from another agency. Same. I mean, it's not like we're showing favoritism to one or the other. National pastors, churches that have had a mission or wherever, then leaves and hands the reins. It's hard for them to be like an official network church since they can't come to our support monetarily in most cases, but we do want to support them spiritually in various branches. And these, because we do not have what's called a clean bias as a chaplain. The other ones, these two that we already have, the treasurer for all the time that we've been existing has retired and is honest to his dad for really helping us to be wise with our money. I learned several things while I was there, and I wanted to share these with you. Now, admittedly, several missionaries are suffering through these difficult situations. So it was awesome to hear of God through COVID. And then second, God is working even though COVID is of the virus due to government regulations, what gospel efforts they've been putting in. And then thirdly, God speakers, and his church, and all of which they're now, well, except for the most recent ones. He had mentioned in one of his talks that when he first got real keen on that idea, because they weren't very big at the time, I introduced myself and I said, so how big was your church when you first? I think we had like 60 or 70 members. I was like, I was challenged and emboldened, and I have a renewed desire 30 on a given Sunday right now, but even in our own area, good churches in this area or in this area. And I have to say, well, there's this for church planting, but at least the desire is there in my own heart, and hopefully convicted in this whole discussion of church planting and even asking God to build his church here at Mercy Baptist Church. But if we want to be the church that God has us to be, then we need a number. We need a plurality of both deacons and elders. My bashfulness in praying boldly to can maintain to be small and only have one officer. General Assembly is in Bremen, Indiana, Grace Fellowship Church in Bremen, where the GA is hosted. So this is the closest GA that we attending the GA, which again is not just for pastors, it's for all sorts of that attended and those who came to the area as well. And each year I meet such church, and that's a great thing. So 2020. So you're looking at the next time that, and we haven't even talked about it, so put it on your calendar. It's always the same week every year, so what would that be? Assembly. Okay, I know that was comments about what you've heard. I hope you're thankful for this like-minded. The nearest one to us is Arbor Church up in Dayton. It's like 60 or 70 years. Did I mention that Mark Chansky, the coordinator, used to pastor Arbor? He said he was too headstrong and basically he needed to leave because he was caught. Mark's a wonderful man. Anything else? Sister churches that we have. Churches 50 across our nation, and counting missionary individuals or families in different countries ministering the gospel. Thank you for this network. We pray that you would prosper us. Don't allow any. We would remain loving toward one another, unified, sent to the uttermost parts of the earth. In Jesus' name. Our discussion in the London Baptist Confession next Sunday.